Top 5 British aircraft of World War II. Tell me in the comments which one is your favourite, and would you like me to do more top 5s? The Swordfish first flew in 1934, outlasted its successor, and was still in production in 1945. In all, around 2,300 were built for the Fleet Air Arm, Royal Air Force and Royal Canadian Air Force by Fairey and Blackburn. The lumbering string bag played a pivotal role in the legendary destruction of the battleship Bismarck, and destroyed the major surface units of the Italian fleet at Taranto in November 1940. And did you know that was the inspiration for the attack on Pearl Harbor, 1 year and 1 month later? Fitted with air-to-surface vessel radar, ASV, the Swordfish protected convoys and hunted submarines from the smallest escort carriers. Built as a private venture and allowed to go ahead only because it used mainly non-strategic materials, i.e. balsa wood, in its construction. The Mosquito was one of the most versatile aircraft of the war. The bomber and reconnaissance versions used their speed rather than armament for self-protection, whilst the night fighter, fighter-bomber and anti-shipping models packed a heavy punch with machine guns, cannons and rockets. The Mosquito was built under license in Canada and Australia, nicknamed the Wooden Wonder / Jack of all trades, including agent dropping. The Supermarine Spitfire is the icon of RAF Fighter Command and the Battle of Britain, which lasted from July the 10th to the 3rd of October 1940. 19 squadrons flew Spitfires during this time, mostly Mark 1As, with 8 Browning machine guns, but also a small number of Mark 1Bs with a pair of 20mm 79-inch cannon. In August and September 1940, the RAF lost 147 Spitfires, but production of replacements was just able to keep pace with this rate of attrition. They were also built in the Mersey Tunnel. Designed by the legendary R.J. Mitchell, who never got to see his famous fighter in action. First flight 5th of March 1936 with Mutt Summers at the controls. Introduced 4th of August 1938. Retired 1961 with the Irish Air Corps. Produced for 10 years from 1938 to 1948. Number built 20,351. Around 50 are still flying today, and it also served with the Royal Canadian Air Force, Free French Air Force, United States Army Air Force, Soviet Red Air Force, and one was even tested by the Luftwaffe. Designed by the legendary Roy Chadwick, who also designed the Avro Vulcan. The Avro Lancaster was the best of the RAF's 4-engined heavies, and the best remembered derived from the underpowered Manchester bomber, which had twin engines, neither of them reliable, and first flew in July 1939, introduced in November 1940. The Lancaster entered service in February 1942 and cost £45,000. Able to fly higher and further than the Halifax or Stirling, it became the mainstay of RAF Bomber Command. It proved adaptable to various special weapons, including the role that it is best remembered for, the upkeep bouncing bomb, with 617 Squadron, the Dam Busters, and post-war was used by the United Kingdom, Canada and France. It was also made in Canada, and it was in service into the 1950s, replaced by the maritime patrol aircraft, the Avro Shackleton, and Vulcan bomber. The Orca Hurricane was less technologically sophisticated than the Spitfire, slower and less manoeuvrable, designed by Sir Sidney Cam, and first flown in 1935. It's my favourite fighter of World War II. But it was a more stable gun platform and more resistant to battle damage. Most importantly, it was more numerous, with 1,715 in service between July and October 1940. Hurricanes destroyed more Luftwaffe aircraft than all other defences combined, including anti-aircraft guns and barrage balloons, plus Blenheim night fighters. Fuselages were fabric covered over a metal tube and wooden structure. Later versions, such as the Mark IIC night fighter and fighter bomber. Later in the war, the Mark 1A Sea Hurricane appeared, modified by General Aircraft Limited. They were carried by CAM ships, catapult-armed merchantmen. More than 80 were modified to be fired from ships' catapults, but once fired, they could not land back on deck, so the pilot would have one of two options: bail out or ditch as close as possible. They also served in Russia and later versions with the Portuguese Air Force until the mid-1950s. I could have picked any of the next aircraft for number 5, the Supermarine Walrus amphibious aircraft, designed by R.J. Mitchell and first flown in 1933. It was considered the eyes of the fleet, and also saved many a downed pilot in the air-sea rescue role from 1941 onwards. It was produced from 1936 to 1944, with 740 produced. Prime users: Royal Navy, Irish Air Corps, Royal Air Force, and Royal Australian Air Force, as well as many other navies. There are only 3 surviving aircraft, one which is based at the Fleet Air Arm Museum at Royal Naval Air Station Yeovilton in Somerset, one at the Royal Air Force Museum, London, formerly known as Royal Air Force Hendon, and Hotel Delta 874 is kept at the Royal Australian Air Force Museum at Royal Australian Air Force Station, Williams Point, Cook, in the state of Victoria. The Bristol Blenheim, one of my all-time favourite aircraft and a true jack of all trades. It was named after the city in New Zealand and was originally a civilian executive transport for Lord Rothermere. Designer was Frank Barnwell, a legend in aviation circles, and its first flight was April 1935. Introduced in 1937, it was retired with the Royal Air Force in 1944 and Finland also retired it in 1958. 4,422 were built. All versions that you see at museums are the Bolingbroke, which was made in Canada, and prime users of this amazing little aircraft were the Royal Air Force, Royal Canadian Air Force, Finnish Air Force, and Royal Yugoslavian Air Force.